I told myself it was just another late-night class. Nothing unusual. Nothing to hold on to. Until the door closed. Not slammed. Just closed. And in the silence of that classroom, it sounded like the start of something I wasn't prepared for. When he lifted his eyes to mine, it felt like he'd been searching for me his whole life. Like I was the last good thing left in his world. And then his voice. Low. Uneven. Fragile, but brave enough to reach me. If I kiss you right now, will you stop me? He was 25. I was 50. His knuckles bruised. His gaze steady. Waiting not for my answer, but for my permission. The first real thing he ever asked me wasn't about class or assignments or deadlines. It was this. Do you still let someone touch you, after grief? I didn't answer. But I didn't stop him from finding out. I hadn't expected to feel anything new at 50. Not joy. Not butterflies. And certainly not that ache. The one blooming just behind my ribs as he looked at me like I still mattered. But I had buried too much to believe in that anymore. 2 years since my husband's death, and his absence still louder than his presence ever was. Every night, it was just me. My silence. My students. And the ghosts of poems that used to mean something. That classroom smelled of chalk and endings. Tuesday, 8 p.m. Half the seats empty, the rest filled with tired souls too worn down to dream. And then he walked in. Late. The door creaked open like the start of a secret. He didn't apologize. Didn't explain. Just nodded once and slid into the back row. Black hoodie still damp from rain. Tattoos climbing his arms like stories etched in ink. But it wasn't his skin that unsettled me. It was his eyes. Eyes that looked guarded, but curious. Tired, but searching. Like someone afraid to hope but hoping anyway. He didn't take notes. Didn't even pretend. He just stared. Not in the way that creeps into your bones. This stare was quiet. Measured. Sad. And when I read aloud Neruda, tonight I can write the saddest lines. His head lifted. And suddenly I wasn't invisible anymore. Not a widow. Not someone past her prime. But someone alive. Breathing. Here. Class ended. The others scattered into the night. But he stayed. In the doorway, he stood like a storm barely held back. And he asked me, do people ever get over grief? Or do they just survive around it? I didn't answer. Instead, something inside me shifted. For the first time in years I was present. We sat in silence. 2 wounded strangers suspended in something deeper than words. He didn't smile. Didn't flirt. He just existed in the same cracked space I did. And that was enough. That night was the beginning. A whisper of something unnamed. A verse written inside my chest. And his name was the first word. If your heart is already tugging at forgotten places, don't scroll past. If you've ever felt seen in silence, like this video. Subscribe if you want to witness how this unfolds, moment by stolen moment. And drop a comment below. We read them all. Because stories like these deserve to be shared. And you deserve to be heard. The rain came heavy that night. Like a secret finally confessed. Unrelenting. Drenching the world in silence. I stepped outside the building, umbrella in hand, expecting nothing but the quiet walk to my car. But he was there. Jace. Standing just beyond the doorway. Hoodie soaked through. Hands buried in his pockets. And eyes that didn't waver when they found mine. Something raw lived in him in that moment. Not waiting for a ride. Not waiting for a friend. Waiting for me. He offered to walk me to my car. And I should have said no. But instead I asked where he lived. 15 blocks, he said. More, if we talk too much. So we walked. The night stretched around us. No destination, just 2 people carrying too many quiet things. We spoke of poetry. Of Neruda's sadness. Of grief that doesn't scream, but lingers like dust in forgotten corners. He told me about his father. How he left when Jace was 10. No note. No explanation. Just a door that never opened again. And a mother who stayed. Present in body. Absent in spirit. Her silence, her armor. I told him I understood. Because death doesn't always end something. Sometimes it just names it. My husband had been gone 2 years. But truthfully, he left long before the heart attack. And Jace, he listened. Like it hurt him to hear it. Like it mattered. We stopped beneath a flickering streetlight. It couldn't decide whether to burn out or hold on. And when he turned to me, something shifted. I wasn't his teacher anymore. I wasn't just an older woman trudging through life. In his eyes, I was still becoming. His hand lifted. Fingers trembling as they brushed my cheek. Not in lust. But in reverence. And then he kissed me. Slow. Careful. As if he wasn't taking, but giving something back. My umbrella slipped from my hand, thudding against the wet ground. But the sound was far away. Because all I could hear was my own heart waking up again. When he pulled back, his voice was barely a whisper. I don't want this to be a mistake. And I, drenched and breathless, answered with the only truth I had left. Then don't let it be. That kiss didn't feel like a slip. It felt overdue. Like the world had tilted just enough for us to fall into the versions of ourselves we didn't know we needed. And beneath that light, in the storm, I realized. Not all storms come to ruin. Some come to wash us clean. We told ourselves it was just about poetry. Nothing more. A Saturday in the library. His project. My guidance. That was the story we agreed to believe. But our bodies knew better. We sat close. Too close. Our knees brushed beneath the table. Neither of us spoke of it, but the silence between us thrummed like a pulse. He pretended to read. Pretended to be still. But I could sense the storm in him. The storm in me. He picked up a collection of poems, flipping to a page he said he liked. His voice, low, uncertain, read aloud. Desire, not as hunger, but as the ache to be seen. And then, he stopped. Not because he forgot the words, but because his eyes were on me now. Not on the book. On my lips. On the space between us, shrinking without either of us moving. Without asking, he reached across the table, placed his hand on mine. Not with force. Not with claim. But with the weight of someone silently asking, will you allow me? I should have pulled away. I didn't. His hand was warm. Careful. Not taking, only offering. And I didn't want to let go. When we stood to leave, I reached for my bag. I hadn't noticed how narrow the shelves were until I felt him behind me. Close. Then closer. My back brushed the spines of books. And his breath whispered against my neck. I can't stop thinking about the way you read those lines. I don't know what possessed me. Maybe the words. Maybe the tremble in his voice. But I kissed him first. My lips found his. Soft at first. Then deeper. A hunger we had both denied. Finally speaking. His hands slid from my back to my waist, memorizing the shape of my yes. My cardigan slipped from my shoulder. Skin bare for the first time in years. He kissed it. Delicately. As though even my skin was sacred. And for a moment I forgot the shelves. The rules. The world. There was only him. Only this. We didn't go further that day. We didn't need to. What we shared wasn't about how far it went. It was about crossing a line that could never be erased. If you've ever felt that electric silence before something sacred unfolded, you understand this moment. Hit like if it stirred something inside you. Subscribe to follow this forbidden journey. And tell us in the comments, because your reflections give this story life. That night, I opened the door to my home. And before either of us spoke, I already knew. Not the kind of knowing tied to facts or dates, The deeper kind. The kind that lives in your chest, waiting years for someone to touch it awake. This wasn't rebellion. Wasn't loneliness reaching for whatever warmth it could find. No. This was gentler. Holier. This was healing. The lamp behind me cast a glow across the room. Jazz whispered low from the corner. 2 untouched wine glasses sat waiting on the table. And beside me on the couch sat a boy. No. Not a boy. Jace. 25. All quiet eyes and nervous breath. And me. 50. Full of ghosts. 2 worlds colliding in silence. We didn't speak of poetry this time. We spoke of fear. Of guilt. Of the edges of what we were becoming. I told him I didn't want to regret this. He didn't argue. Didn't flood me with promises. Instead, he placed my hand against his chest. Over his heartbeat. Then don't, he whispered. The kiss that followed was different. Not urgent. Not desperate. Tender. As though he wasn't claiming me, but asking permission to stay. When he pulled me close, it wasn't hunger. It was reverence. We undressed slowly. No hurry. No shame. Just the unwrapping of ache that had lived in both of us too long. The city lights spilled through the windows, cutting across the sheets in broken lines. He paused. Met my eyes. Are you sure? And I was. With every breath. Every scar he didn't flinch from. I was sure. We made love like it was a language only the 2 of us understood. Like poetry written in silence, finally spoken aloud. His hands traced me with reverence. His mouth kissed wounds he didn't cause. And when tears fell, he didn't pull away. He held me tighter. You're still beautiful, he whispered. And in that moment, I believed him. Afterward, we didn't reach for shame. Didn't cover ourselves in hurry. We just stayed. Skin to skin. Breath to breath. 2 broken souls wrapped in the silence of something newly whole. If this moment stirred something in you, show it. Hit like. Subscribe for more stories like this. And tell us, what did this scene awaken in you? I woke the next morning. Alone. But not the kind of alone that hollows you out. Not grief's echo. This was different. The sheets beside me were still warm. The air still carrying the scent of skin and something new. Then I heard it. The hum of life in the kitchen. The smell of coffee. I followed barefoot. Quiet. Heart stumbling toward the sound. And there he was. Jace. Bathed in morning light. Shirtless. Cross-legged on the rug. One of my old journals open in his lap. The ones I hadn't touched since my husband died. The ones I had forgotten how to read. I froze. Every nerve in me lit with something fragile. I hadn't meant for him to find those pages. But he looked up. And his eyes. They weren't judging. They weren't curious. They were shining. Like he had found something sacred. Rachel, he said softly. These words. They're the things I've always felt, but never had the language for. He stood. Closed the distance. Knelt before me. Placed the journal aside. Kissed my stomach first. Gentle. Reverent. Then rose slowly. Kissed my lips. As though saying thank you without words. You're not too old for me, he whispered. You're just not too late. And something in me broke open. Not from pain. Not from shame. But from the truth. My life hadn't ended when my husband died. It had only paused. And Jace had found the courage to press play. We made love again that morning. Slower. Softer. Each touch a promise written onto skin. Outside, the world stirred. Birds in the trees. Cars in the distance. Light spilling across the floor. But inside, it was just us. Time bending. Breath shared. And when I saw my old journal lying open in the sunlight, my words shining back at me, I whispered, maybe fate is a poet too. Because in that room I wasn't 50. I wasn't broken. I wasn't forgotten. I was seen, held, loved. And for the first time in years, I was beginning again. If this story wrapped around your heart, don't let it go. Like this video. Subscribe for more stories that remind us it's never too late. And tell us in the comments, have you ever found a beginning in a place you thought only held endings? Because some stories aren't meant to be hidden. They're meant to be felt. And this one, it deserves to be shared. So if it touched you, don't just carry it silently. Pass it on. Share this story with someone who needs to remember that even in the quiet ruins of grief, love can still find a way in.